Basketball Coach of the Year. Henry Iber, Coach of the Year. Associate Press Coach of the Year. 5-time Big Ten Tournament Champions. 8-time Big Ten Regular Season Champions. 7-time NCAA Regional Final Four. The 2000 NCAA Division I National Championship. Inducted into the Naismith National Basketball Hall of Fame in 2016. Our own, a Judd Heathcote disciple from Iron Mountain, Michigan. Please give a resounding welcome to Tom Izzo from Michigan State University.
Wow. And got his ass kicked in this great city this year. And so, hello to everybody. All that sounded so good, and really all that matters is didn't find a way to win a big game. But first of all, I know that at this group here, there's a lot of people looking for jobs. Everybody's looking for a college job. I got one open. I came down here with my assistant, Mike Garland. He drove to 3 wrong places. I knew my way around Detroit better than he did. So anybody needs a job, he's sitting here laughing. I'm serious. And so I plan on, I'll be taking interviews when this thing is over. First of all, Horatio, I think over the years he's invited me down a couple times. It never worked out, and I just want to say thank you. It's great that somebody's trying to do things for the coaches. You know, there's one thing I learned in this business is you better take care of your own, because there aren't many other people going to take care of you. So, you know, coaches, events like this where coaches can kind of talk to coaches and take care of coaches, I think is going to be very important. I've learned a lot over this is my 33rd year at Michigan State, 34th year, I take it. You know, I started, as Judd used to call me, a grad assistant, or he used to call me a grad ass. And I did that for 3 years after leaving Northern Michigan University, where I went to school with my still assistant, Mike Garland. We used to talk, and one of us got a job we were going to drag the other one with, and I got a job, and he was one of the first guys I knocked on his door. And so Mike and I came down from the UP. Those of you who've never been up there, I saw William Eddy back there. He played up there. We have 11 months of winter, 1 month of poor sledding in the UP. So this is cold, but it's not as bad as it is up there, because we don't have as much snow as we did up there. But, you know, our journey, and a lot of you are maybe looking to get into college ball, maybe looking to get into pro ball. I saw Rodney here, there's some guys in pro ball here. Everybody's got a different path, but if I've learned one thing in this, there's not a lot of shortcuts to getting there. I mean, once in a while, and you know, Konzo, you came up kind of the same way. He worked for Gene Cady, played for Gene Cady. So no matter what Konzo and I do, we can do just about anything in this world. And we get a straight ticket to heaven working for Cady and Heathcote. So we're going to be heading up that way one way or another. But I think, you know, all of us started at a young age and kind of as a GA, or worked our way up through the system. And I look at the guys that I've had on my staff, and from DJ and Mike to Dane and Brian Gregory, Stan Heath, Tom Crane, you know, everybody kind of went up that route. In this day and age, with everything changing a little bit, there's a few different ways to get there. It seems like everybody's on a faster track to get to where they want to go, and sometimes that works. But for me, you know, when I was a GA, worked my way up to restricted earning, and then became a head coach or assistant coach finally. And I did get to, as a GA, recruit Vernon Carr, who's been up a lot in the last couple of years. But the first big time recruit I had when I was an assistant coach was Steve Smith from here. And to this day, I tell Steve all the time that I owe him a lot more than what he owes me. And the reason I say that is because that kind of started our our spot in our new building, the President's Center. And Steve's first year, we won a conference championship. If we got to the tournament back then, it was great. You know, that was the goal each year, get to the NCAA tournament. Now the goal is to win a national championship. We didn't have a very good year. And I guess that, you know, we created that monster, so we got to live with it, but it's not a bad monster to live with. Getting a job, you know, I look at a lot of different ways to get them, and, you know, but I still think for the most part, what I've had some guys do an incredible job of, other guys not do as good a job of. I'm not sure. Did a great job of the networking that it takes to get somewhere in any job this day and age. Everybody's got to have a job where you try to, you know, meet other people, learn to get better, learn from other people, and for the most part, meet other people. And what I did is, early on, I went to camps and clinics all over. Like this. I tried to go to as many as I could go to. I worked a lot of camps back then. Everybody was trying to work camps. And you'd work a camp and try to meet a coach and try to meet some other coach and just hope that somehow you can piggyback on and get up there. You know, for me, I was a GA at Northern. I was a high school coach for 1 year. I was a GA for a year there. Small-time assistant at a Division II school, and then I came here because I couldn't get a job. I applied at Eastern, Western, Central, UAD, Michigan State. I interviewed once with Judd with a broken jaw. That was an interesting event in itself, and to the day he died, he used to rip me about how I couldn't talk, and yet I interviewed for the job. But I finally talked him into letting me come as a GA at 27 years old. And I was a GA from 27, 28, and 29, and that's not the normal way of getting there, but it just kind of proves that there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, and there's a lot of different ways to get where you want to get. The bottom line is, and I thought one of the things that I found is I didn't get a chance to help Judd coach much. He came from the old school where the head coach did all the coaching, the assistant coach might do a few things and help get a few players, and that was it. So I kind of had to find my niche, and my niche, it was when the VCRs just came out, the satellite dishes. And so my niche was convincing him to get a satellite dish and a VCR instead of the old 8mm tapes, and I'm kind of dating myself now, but just finding a way to get that VCR and proving to him that you could tape games off TV kind of was how I got in with him. And then, you know, that next year, took on some academic responsibilities because I had to do something off the court because I knew it wasn't going to be on the court to impress him. Between the film sessions and maybe coming up with a few things academically, it worked. He hired me as a full-time assistant, as I said. First day I came was the Franklin settlement down in Detroit. And I was watching a kid, Eric Wilson. Some of you remember, you remember Eric Wilson. Did you play with him? No. Yeah. At Minnesota. And we saw this skinny guy over on the side that was 6'5", about 100 nothing. And it was Steve Smith. And so I ended up getting Steve, and he had the great career, and it kind of propelled me a little bit. And we won a couple of Big Ten championships, and then, you know, it's almost like the NCAA tournament. You know, you got to be good enough to be in it, and then you got to be lucky enough to advance sometimes. And me and you weren't lucky this year, were we? Huh? Hey, I'm not coming here and taking all this crap on myself. I've known you, Conzo, forever. You're right in there with me, you know. At least you're not in your home state, your hometown, you know. I mean, a little harder for me than it is for you, but no, you do. You got to be good. You got to be a little lucky, and I was lucky. Okay, it was time for Judd to start thinking about retirement. A couple of smaller jobs open, some people had an interest in me, and the AD then at the time was George Perlis, and he said, well, maybe we should look at him here. And so it was kind of unprecedented. You know, I had no head coaching experience other than 1 year in high school, and I got lucky. You know, I got real lucky, and got the job. Had to wait a year to get it, a lot like Matt Painter did at Purdue. I think Gene kind of followed the same set of steps that Judd did, and it worked out. It worked out really well for me. But it worked out for me because early on, the guy before me didn't recruit in this state as much. And I felt like this state was the most important thing, that we had to put a fence around it. So came down and got Mike, and as I said, Mike was a guy that I knew from college, and we kind of set our game plan together of what we wanted to do, and it worked out for us, you know. And I said after my second year, I think when Perry was at University of Detroit, they beat us 2-3 times in a row, and Central Michigan beat us. By my third year, I felt like I was that far from getting fired. We were 4-3, and roof was caving in, and you know, we had a lot of staff meetings, and you know, it was keep your head above water. And after one of those big staff meetings, the one thing I told my staff, and my staff was everybody. I mean, I brought secretaries in, I brought everybody in. I said, you know, we've got to change a little bit here. We're going to have to start working more nights and weekends for those secretaries and those other people that didn't work as much. One of the secretaries is my sister-in-law. And if any of you are thinking of hiring your sister-in-law, she was already there. It's a bad idea, don't do it. But I already had it. It happened before I got there. And she says, what do you mean? We got to start working nights and weekends. I said, well, I can't pay you any, but we got to do a better job of recruiting. We got to do this, we got to do that. She says, well, don't you think I work hard enough? And I said, well, you know, at 4:50, 9:30 every day, there's a set of starting blocks that pop out of the carpet in front of your desk. You get in them, and at 5 o'clock, you're out the door. So I said, no, I don't think you do, you know. It sounded okay then, but at the Thanksgiving meal that year, it sucked, to be honest with you. I had a lot of trouble for that, going through that day, and but it worked out, because that year we went 18-4 from then on, and won our first Big Ten championship, and the next year it was the 3 Final Fours in a row, and then, you know, things start rolling. But for all of you that are in here that are looking to either get into college or even the NBA, which I've looked at a few times, and you know, what I did, it's kind of interesting, because some of what I did in the NBA, looking at those jobs, I was actually afraid of the NBA. I'd never been there, didn't know what the travel would be like, didn't understand what it would be like. And so, like, now we've got a thing where I send my assistants every year to at least 2 NBA teams to try to, you know, not only pick up some things for us, but maybe for them, to kind of learn the way of the world in the different levels of sports. For all of you that are high school coaches, I tried to stick with what I think has been something that works for us. And getting everybody on the same page is getting harder now. Everybody's more transit, everybody's leaving, whether it's players, whether it's coaches, whether it's strength coaches or trainers. I mean, so many people are leaving. And that hasn't been what I've done. I mean, I've been in the same place forever. There's positives to that, and there's negatives to that. I think the positives are there's a comfort level there. But I explain it like moving into a new community, you know. You move into a new neighborhood. The first year you meet the people around you, and the second year it grows and grows. Pretty soon you have the block party, and everything goes like that. But in coaching, you come in and everybody loves you, and then as the years go on, you know, like you do with a player, you start picking them apart. And so there's that balance on what is better, staying a long time or not. I look at you only because you moved, 3 times now? And been successful everywhere he's gone. So there are different ways to skin a cat, as I said earlier. There are different ways to have success. and you got to figure out the one that works for you. I've learned one thing in this job that has transcended time. It didn't matter when it was the beginning, the middle, or at this point in time right now. Spending time with people is probably the #1 thing you can do. I say all the time that if you're going to be hard on a player, which don't think he wasn't hard on a player either back in his day, because I remember some of those days. But if you are going to be hard on a player, you better, what I will say, when I came into this business, there were so many good coaches in the city of Detroit, it was scary. I mean, everybody was, I guess, a state of Michigan Hall of Famer. You can go through the list of guys, and it was unbelievable amount of coaches that have been in a long time, very disciplined. When I first started recruiting down here, everybody said, well, I don't know if you want to play for Judd Heathcote, he's tougher than nails. And then I come down here and I watch some of the coaches. Mike and I laugh about it to this day. When Dwayne Jones and William Eddy come up for the state tournament or something, we tell these stories and we laugh. Some of those coaches back then were crazy. I mean, people were grabbing people, throwing people, hitting people, God. I said, man, playing for Judd would be a piece of cake compared to playing for some of these guys. But what I realized back then, the relationships that a Harry Hairston had, or, those relationships that Perry had, or all the different guys that had been through it, was different. You didn't seem to have a lot of guys transferring. Guys homed in on what they had to do. People coached them as hard as they could coach them. And then you went on from there. And so I looked at all that and I said, how do those guys do that? And I thought the one thing was they all had relationships with their players. Sometimes it was to save them from maybe some of the neighborhoods they were from. Sometimes the gym was a place that everybody could go and hang out. I don't know what the reasons were, but I realized then spending time is the hardest thing there is to do. We don't have as much time to spend. There's too much going on. I mean, you go home, you got to teach your kid how to use Xbox now instead of just telling them to watch the damn TV. And you got to spend time texting everybody, recruits and that. You don't have time to just spend with your guys. I'd say that to this day, if there's one thing that I prided myself on, and I think our staff, I think we spend as much time as anybody in America with our own players. And that, to me, gives you a license that they trust you a little bit more. But every time you get ahead of the curve, then there comes a new angle to it. The new angle, and some of you are, and I am, and my assistants are. It's funny with DJ, he's got a daughter now that's a pretty good volleyball player. The new monster in the room starts with a P. It's parents. Parents are the new monster in the room. And the only reason I say that is, we'll get a player, if he's from here or if he's from a different state, and it's amazing how the parents know more that's going on in college than you do sometimes. Would you agree? Huh? Conzo got his phone right there. He's texting one of the parents that's mad at him right now as we speak. So, it's gotten to the point where, again, if you don't trust the person you gave your kid to, then you're going to question everything they do. And this day and age with the social media, guys and gals, it's harder to stay above water because everybody's sending messages out, and everybody's talking. And that's where you really got to keep your guys glued in. And everybody now has a handler. Everybody has a workout man. Everybody has this. Everybody has that. Everybody has guys in the NBA calling them. Everybody's got agents calling them. Everybody's got coaches that think that's their way to get a job. And so it's a lot more difficult, in my humble opinion, than it used to be. But I will say this. If you do spend time with your players and you do get them on your side, it's amazing what you can accomplish. I had a good team this year, and we didn't quite get it done, but we won 30 games. And it was probably the most enjoyable, at least on the court. A few things off the court weren't as enjoyable, but on the court it was very enjoyable because I had guys that were all working towards a common goal. And when your best players are your hardest workers, as we all know, a lot of things happen. The parental part of this, here's how I deal with it. And your old boss, for the last 3 years he was here, Gene called me one day, he said, somebody told me you have parent meetings. He says, you don't do that in college, do you? I said, oh yeah, and I'd be interested to talk to Rodney after this, because I talked to a couple of NBA guys now, and I think it's even filtering up to that level, you know, where people have to talk to them. Remember this, don't get caught up in what you have to do, get caught up in what the results are. And so I do. I've had a parent meeting for 20 of the 23 years I've been at Michigan State. I bring them in on Midnight Madness. I sit them down. Sometimes I bring a cop in. Sometimes I bring a lawyer in. Sometimes I bring our compliance person in. Sometimes I just talk about all the problems that can happen in college. And I talk about playing time. I talk about going to class. And I ask parents, I said, so how do you want me to handle your kid? Now remember, all the parents are sitting there together. So I said, if he skips a bunch of classes, what do you want me to do? And the moms jump up right away. Well, you better do something because I don't want my son missing classes. The dads are usually sitting back there saying, well, I don't want him missing classes either unless he's playing real good. And so, you know, you talk to him about it. And I said, so it's okay if I sit him out of half of a game if he missed a bunch of classes? Hell yes, you know, and all the moms, really everybody's shaking their head. I said, is it okay if his name's on the bottom of the ticker that says Mike Garland's missing half this game because he couldn't find the classroom? And all of a sudden, you should have seen that happen to him when he was in college when I played with him. But you should have seen the parents change their tune a little bit. You know, we're in a day and age with this social media where everything these poor kids do is out there. And trust me when I say this. I've sat in front of presidents. I've sat on every committee at the NCAA level. I've sat on the board for 15 years of the National Basketball Coaches Association. I've sat in front of a lot of people. And it's really interesting when there's older people in the room or younger people in the room. When something happens, you know, a president will say, well, how can that happen? And then, well, it could be something minor, you know. And I say, well, you know, once in a while I get caught by saying, did you ever go to college? You know, we forget if some of you really, you were a good kid in college and a great player, but you probably did some things in college that if you were living in this day and age with somebody taking a picture of you, with somebody tweeting it out there, with somebody, it would be insane. And it's very difficult right now, I think, for us to figure out and try to hold guys accountable, but understand they're 17, 18, 19 years old. And that is probably the most challenging part of, I think, all of our jobs. And I think it is. Where is Rodney back there? You can't see. There he is here. I think it is even in, it's going to be in the NBA. I think it's coming. You know, guys like Popovich might not want to talk about those things now, but I've worked with Doc Rivers and you know, I think all those guys are trying to get out before it comes in, but it's all coming. And it's coming because we're getting younger guys in the league, which means we got parents going with them, which means that there's going to be problems. Those, you know, I think of our guys, and they're dealing with problems with no money. If I had $1 million in my pocket and I was going out, there'd probably be bigger problems. Willie keeps laughing up here because he's thinking back to those days and he's saying, hell yes, there would be. So we got different challenges than we had even, I'd say about 7, 8 years ago for me, when the social media frenzy became big. it's really changed our jobs. Would you agree? So, and it's changed them where the NCAA tells us that we can spend 20 hours a week with our guys, but we're responsible for them 24/7. So it's kind of an oxymoron there, you know. We're supposed to be able to understand what they're doing on a basis of every minute of every day, but yet we're only allowed to really spend 20 hours a week with our guys. So those are some of the problems that I wouldn't be in a hurry to even leave high school with, but you're going to have some of the same problems. As far as what I would look for in a coach, personally, I mean, contacts are important for us because recruiting's big, but I've never really hired a guy who's got to be able to motivate people. As far as the subject matter, you wouldn't be applying for a job if you didn't know how to coach. I mean, some are better than others, but the X's and O's parts of it, I think I'd rather teach a guy some of those things than I would how to have people skills enough to talk to people, or have work ethic enough to work hard, or to have the ability to motivate guys to get them in the gym and do things. I think one of the things I've looked at over the years is whenever a guy gets a scholarship, I think it's already presumed that he loves the game of basketball. And I'd say that over my years, there aren't a ton of guys that love the game. Maybe half the guys on your team love the game, where they're going to work morning, noon, and night without us having to bring them in. Those self-motivated players are the ones, to me, that really take the game to another level. And yet, you got to be able to get to more than that if you're going to be a championship caliber team. So you do it by one of two ways. Your assistants get in the middle of it and try to encourage these guys, spend time with them, watch film with them. But the other players on your team, we have a line at our place that a player-coach team is a lot better than a coach-coach team. And most of our players think they're smarter than the coaches anyway, so it works very well at my place. But I think there's truth to it. You know, just like if I was an employee at a company, you know, when the workers at that company do more than the president of that company and take ownership, I think you have a better company. Just like I think when our players take ownership in our program, we have a better program. Might not be a better team that year, but a better program. And that's why I've emphasized so much for me that I've always tried to recruit somewhat geographically and local, so that those guys get up more, somewhat local, so those guys come back more. And it's one of the things that I've really stressed at our place is when those former guys come back, and we're lucky, you know, with Steve being from here and having a great year, with Magic being from Lansing, his parents still live there, and he comes back a lot, you know. Draymond's still from Saginaw, so he comes back a lot. When those guys come back a lot and have had success at the next level, they can spend time with our guys, and, you know, they'd rather hear from the players that have accomplished what they're trying to accomplish than the coaches who think they know how to get there. And I think we do know how to get there, but maybe we haven't been there. I know I haven't been at that level, but I think that's a very, very important part of this. I learned something from my good buddy Nick Saban. He has Nick and I became assistants together at Michigan State. And then Nick went away for a little bit, came back, and we both were head coaches the same year at Michigan State. So for 5 years we spent together. Last year his daughter got married, and I went down to Alabama to the wedding. And I walked into his office, and he had a great sign there. And the sign said, you got to be able to confront and demand. And I said, what does that mean? You know, kind of. And he says, well, it's kind of for my assistant coaches and to remind myself every day that we have to confront guys if they're not doing what's right. And not everybody is confrontational. Some people avoid it, and some people seek it. It's like contact. You know, I'm always looking for a seeker, not an avoider. Well, I think it's the same thing, you know. Some people seek confrontation, some people are uncomfortable with it. So he thinks to be a good assistant coach at Alabama, you got to be able to seek confrontation. And if you get to the point where you can handle confrontation, then can you demand that what you're telling them gets done? So confront and demand, confront the problem and demand that it gets finished. And I think that's a pretty good line that, we're trying to do even a better job of, confront guys, because sometimes we're confronting parents, we're confronting outside guys that maybe are telling them what they think is right. And you got to be able to hold your own on that. And it's not always easy. And yet, I think it's why for us, we spend a lot of time at a round table, not a square table. Kind of want a round table where everybody can look at each other, and don't have a lot of big meetings over texts or emails. I don't think I've used my email once in my life up there. It's not because I'm old school. It's because I don't believe in not being able to look at a guy in the eye and seeing how he feels and what he does and what he thinks. I always tell my staff and my team, I'm not the greatest coach, but I am one of the world's greatest body language readers. And to read body language, you got to look somebody in the eye and see what they do and how they feel and how they accept either the criticism or how they accept the compliments. Is it, yeah, man, I got it. You're right, I'm the best. Or is it, geez, why are you always picking on me, And you get to read that body language, and I think you really understand. So I would advise all of you that if you're doing something where you were trying to get through to a player, it would be spend time at a round table with your staff and him and sometimes parents. I mean, I bring dads up all the time and tell them, come on, watch practice for 2 days. I open my practice up to parents all the time, which is unconventional. Once in a while, I gotta clean up my language a little bit, but if it's not, I warn them ahead of time. That's the way it is. But I think if they see what's really going on, they're able to deal with it a little better. So that's one thing I use, and I got a couple more here, and then I'm gonna open it up for some questions, because I wanna talk about some things you guys wanna talk about. But you don't need them to like you, as everybody says, but you need them to respect you. And if they can like and respect you at the same time, then you got something special. And I had a kid in Bridges who was, to me, one of the more unique kids I've ever had. He worked his tail off. It was 6:30 in the morning. He worked. He was a pretty good student. But you could push him, pull him, hug him, kiss him, kick him. You could do whatever you want. And he just believed that people were trying to help him get to where he wanted to go. And it kind of made me feel good about my profession again, because there's times I haven't felt as good about it by the way things go. So I would say you can't always worry if they like you now. You got to worry if they respect you and like you later. Draymond was, I laughed when I watched Steve Kerr when he handed Iguodala the clipboard and everybody made a big deal about it. I said, I handed Draymond the clipboard 100 times. And in fact, sometimes I didn't hand it to him, he just took it from me. And I said, you know what? If a guy's gonna take that much ownership in it, and I had faith in what he was saying, there were a lot of times that would happen in a huddle, or he'd argue about something. I like guys that argue, personally. I really do. Because if they're that passionate enough to argue with me, and they know how much film I watch, or they know that I've done my job, they must have something on their mind that they think is right. And so I've been a little different as a coach than some guys. There's some guys, I'm not sure DJ would have said a word to Judd. And yet, Draymond and I had many different exchanges over my period of time with him. But I love that kid. I love what he's done. I love how he is. And even though once in a while, you see a different side of him, whenever I talk to Steve Kerr, he always tells me I trade a lot of guys before I trade them, because he has the ability to win. He knows how to win, and winning is important. Now, for the AU guys in here, if there are some, that would be my wish for you. You know, in high school, you only play 20-some games. And in high school, if you lose a game at times, there's not another game. In AAU ball, sometimes you can lose a lot of games and there's always another game. And I think sometimes, there's been some programs in this state that have been really good, and winning is at a high priority. And we've had teams in this state when I started that were winning national championships in the summer. But I think sometimes kids are just playing so that we watch them instead of playing to learn how to win. And so that's another area that I think if you all could help us, it'd be put winning as a priority, get guys to believe in the team concept of things. And it's a pretty selfish world right now. Twitter's all about me, it's not about you. It's not about us, it's about me. And I think we have to overcome that. And I tell my guys a lot, if we were golfers, wrestlers, boxers, that'd be cool. It'd be great, because then it is all about me. But when you play in a team sport, it's all about us. And, you know, I talked to Draymond 2 days ago. You know, they've had more injuries than Carter got liver pills. And all of a sudden getting that team back together. There's a couple other teams, the Spurs, you know, some good teams that have had a ton of injuries. And they kind of realize if they don't have everybody, the spokes, the wheel doesn't work as well. And that's the one thing I believe in team sports, the way it's so good, but it's so difficult. You have to find a way to keep everybody on the same page. So I don't know how long, Horatio, you want me to speak, but I think I'm about done. But I'll close with this. What I learned this year has probably been, that would be a whole nother session. It would be a longer session. But the biggest thing I learned is this. You can't believe everything you read and everything you hear. You got to stick up for our guys. There's one thing that I've appreciated about this community down here. I really have. I mean, I saw coaches demand things out of kids down here that I wouldn't even be able to do again. But when I got some of those kids, I realized how much they appreciated their high school coach. And I kind of, the reason they did is because that coach got them out of the neighborhood, maybe. That coach fed them. That coach took them to campus visits because maybe parents didn't have enough money to do it. Those high school coaches spent a lot of money, as I'm sure those of you that are in here still do of your own money now today. But what I really loved about it, they stuck up for their kids. They spent time with their kids. They believed in their kids. And they didn't kick them to the curb or throw them under the bus when things weren't right. There's been some guys down here that have helped me with some kids that we've had that maybe haven't gone the right road in every minute of every day. But I promise you this, it'll be a cold day in hell before I'm giving up on them. Our job is not to just look at them and condemn them. Our job is to change them and to help make them better for the society ahead. Everybody wants to get out of college quick. I can't tell you how many parents say to me, boy, my kid better be out now, not pro guys. Those parents say, my kid better be out of here in 1 year, right? But my kid's got to get out of here in 4 years. You know, I meet kids on campus, oh, my son better, and I always say, yeah, you know, non-athletes, I say, yeah, you better get him out of here in 4 years, so then he's got 40 years to work instead of getting him out of here in 5 years. He's got 39 years to work. Once they leave college, they join our world. And our world is tough. You know, I'm talking to Jaron Jackson and Miles when they decide to leave. And it's a good decision for them. It really is. But once they step out, once they sign with that agent, now they're in big man's world. Now they're in Rodney's world. Now they're in a world that, you know, you don't play good, you're gone. You don't do the right thing, you're gone. They got jobs like you and I got. You know, we don't win enough, we're gone. And that's putting on your big man pants. And sometimes at 18, 19, 20, hell, I'm still trying to be a man at 60. So I understand that, you know, I still make mistakes. I'm still not perfect. But I do appreciate communities like this, where a lot of you have stuck with people for a long, long time. I've learned something. And it's the way I'm going to do it, and it's the way I have done it. And this year's been an interesting year that I'm sure that when it's over, I'm going to learn a lot from this year. But I'll be a better coach, I'll be a better parent, and I'll be a better person for that, and that's all I can ask. So from me to you, it's thanks for being here. Horatio, I think it's incredible what you've done with your group over the last couple of years. And I say that because this is a pretty neat event. You know, I told Mike, I flew in today and he picked me up and I came up here, I threw on my sweats. He said, no. This is a classy event, you know. And I said, damn, you know. Got rid of my sweats and threw on a sport coat. And here's where I am. But thank you very much. And if there's questions you want to talk later, I'd be glad to talk. And if not, Rachel, thank you. And all you guys, thank you.
Well, I guess we're coming to a closing, but it's a few people I would like to acknowledge. My board, all my board members that's present, would you please stand?